Is this seat only for the rich?
The question did not echo out loud in the cafe, yet it hung in the air like a fragile ornament about to fall and shatter. In a room glowing with crystal chandeliers, polished wood, and soft Christmas lights, one empty chair became heavier than gold. A young girl stood frozen beside it, her hands gripping the worn strap of her old bag, her eyes filled with a mix of courage and shame, while a powerful man sat alone, wrapped in wealth, silence, and a loneliness no one at the cafe could see. In that single moment, two completely different worlds brushed against each other, and neither of them would ever be the same again. If you believe that kindness can change destinies, that second chances can appear in the most unexpected places, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Your small action might be the light someone else is waiting for. The cafe stood on a quiet street in Boston, Massachusetts, glowing warmly against the cold December night. Snow drifted gently outside tall windows, coating the sidewalks in white, while inside, the air smelled of cinnamon, roasted coffee beans, and expensive desserts few people ever finished. Soft classical music floated through the room, blending with the low murmur of conversations between couples, families, and businesspeople dressed in tailored suits. It was the kind of place where the chairs seemed to cost more than most people's monthly rent, and the waiters moved with a rehearsed grace, trained to recognize wealth at a glance. Every table felt reserved for success, comfort, and belonging. At the far corner of the cafe sat Nathaniel Carter, a man whose name alone carried weight in boardrooms across the United States. He was in his early 40s, sharply dressed in a dark suit, his watch worth more than the average car parked outside. He owned multiple companies, employed thousands, and was often praised in magazines as a visionary CEO who built empires from numbers and nerve. That night, however, none of it mattered. He sat alone, his coffee untouched, his gaze fixed on the flickering candle in front of him, as if it were asking questions he had avoided for years. Nathaniel had chosen that cafe because it was quiet and anonymous. Christmas Eve had a way of exposing the hollow spaces inside even the most powerful people. His penthouse apartment felt too large, his phone too silent. Success had given him everything except warmth. The loss of his wife years earlier had taught him how loud silence could be, especially during holidays. He told himself he was there for coffee, but deep down, he was there to feel less invisible. Across the room, near the entrance where cold air slipped in each time the door opened, stood a girl named Grace Holloway. She was 19, small-framed, with tired eyes that had learned far too early how to measure the world by what it could take from her. Her coat was thin and faded, her shoes damp from walking in the snow, and her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail that spoke of rushed mornings and neglected mirrors. She clutched a canvas bag filled with textbooks and folded resumes, the kind of bag that carried dreams heavier than its seams could handle. Grace had not planned to step into that cafe. She had been walking back from a late shift at a grocery store, her paycheck already spent before it reached her hands, when the cold grew unbearable. The glow from the cafe windows felt like a promise of warmth, even if only for a moment. She knew she did not belong there. She could see it in the reflections of the glass, in the way the waiters moved, in the confident laughter of people who never counted coins before ordering. Still, the ache in her feet and the hunger twisting in her stomach pushed her forward. The moment she stepped inside, she felt the invisible line. Heads did not turn openly, but eyes noticed. A waiter paused, uncertain. Grace pretended not to see, her cheeks burning as she scanned the room. Every table was occupied except one chair across from a man sitting alone. A single empty seat, framed by elegance, felt like both an invitation and a challenge. Grace hesitated, her heart pounding louder than the music, as memories of rejection flooded her mind. Shelters turning her away when they were full, job interviews ending with polite smiles, classrooms where she felt smaller than her circumstances. She stood there longer than she realized, until the warmth of the cafe clashed painfully with the cold reality she carried inside. That was when Nathaniel noticed her. Not because she asked for attention, but because she stood out in a room full of certainty. Her presence disrupted the carefully balanced scene, like a crack in polished glass. He saw the way she held herself, the way her eyes kept dropping to the empty chair and then away, as if she were asking permission from the world itself. Grace finally moved. Her steps were careful, almost apologetic, as she approached the table. She stopped beside the empty chair, her fingers tightening around her bag, her voice trembling before it even formed. The question came from somewhere deep inside her, shaped by years of being told no without words. Was this seat only for the rich? It was not a challenge or an accusation. It was a plea wrapped in dignity, a test of whether the world had room for someone like her, even just for a few minutes. The cafe seemed to hold its breath. Nathaniel looked up, meeting her eyes, and in that instant, something shifted. He did not see poverty first. He saw exhaustion, fear, and a fragile kind of courage that money could never buy. He saw someone standing where pride and desperation collided, and it reminded him of a version of himself he had buried under layers of success. Without thinking about who was watching or what was expected, he nodded slowly, his hand gesturing toward the chair as if it had always belonged there. Grace sat down, her movements stiff, unsure whether the moment would vanish if she breathed too deeply. The waiter approached, clearly confused, but Nathaniel ordered for both of them without hesitation. Grace wanted to disappear and stay at the same time. She wrapped her hands around the warm cup placed in front of her, the heat seeping into her fingers like kindness she had almost forgotten how to accept. As minutes passed, the awkwardness softened into something quieter. Grace did not speak much, afraid that her story might stain the elegance of the place, but her presence filled the space in a way Nathaniel had not felt in years. He observed her carefully, noticing how she savored each sip, how her shoulders relaxed slightly as warmth replaced cold. He wondered what had led her there, what weight she carried behind those tired eyes. Grace's life had been shaped by loss and responsibility. Raised in Ohio by a single mother who worked 2 jobs, she learned early how fragile stability could be. When her mother passed away during Grace's final year of high school, the world became a series of deadlines and compromises. College dreams turned into night shifts, and nights turned into mornings spent studying while exhaustion pressed against her eyelids. She moved from couch to couch, from temporary hope to temporary disappointment, always telling herself that survival was a form of success. Nathaniel listened as pieces of her life emerged slowly, not as complaints but as facts. Each detail struck him harder than he expected. He realized how insulated his own struggles had been, cushioned by resources and choices Grace had never known. Her resilience humbled him, and for the first time in years, he felt present, not as a CEO or a widower, but as a human being sharing space with another. Outside, snow continued to fall, but inside the cafe, time seemed to stretch. The Christmas lights reflected in the windows like distant stars, and for Grace, the moment felt unreal, like a scene borrowed from someone else's life. She knew she would have to leave soon, return to her cold walk and uncertain night, but the warmth she felt was no longer just physical. It was the warmth of being seen without judgment. Nathaniel paid the bill quietly, standing as Grace gathered her things. He did not offer charity wrapped in superiority. Instead, he offered something rarer, attention and respect. Before they parted, he handed her a simple card, his name printed plainly, without titles. He told her that sometimes help did not come in the form we expected, and sometimes asking was braver than giving. Grace stepped back into the cold night, the snow stinging her cheeks, but her heart felt lighter. The card in her pocket felt heavier than money. It felt like possibility. She walked not just with warmth in her hands, but with a sense that maybe the world had not closed its doors on her after all. Days passed, and the memory of the cafe lingered like a quiet promise. Grace returned to her routine, but something had shifted inside her. She found the courage to make a call she would have avoided before. That call led to an interview, not because of pity, but because Nathaniel had recognized her determination and recommended her for an entry-level position at one of his companies, emphasizing her work ethic rather than her story. The job did not solve everything overnight. Grace still struggled, still counted expenses, still fought exhaustion. But she now had stability, a foothold on ground that no longer felt like it was crumbling beneath her. She worked harder than ever, driven not by fear, but by gratitude and belief. Slowly, her life began to change, not dramatically, but steadily, like snow melting into spring. Nathaniel, too, was changed.